Okay. And we are live. Hello, I'm Rena Diptyanabil, aka Mummy Imperfect, and you're listening to the Sisterhood of Mummy Imperfect, the podcast where each and every week I explore the wonderful world of womanhood with the help of my fabulous guests. And this podcast is a place where you get your weekly dose of unfiltered girl chat. It's a place where we celebrate those women who are game changers. Now, you might be listening to this on Podbean or any other podcast platform. But if you are tuning in live on YouTube, then know that you can comment and you can ask a question at any point, and we would love to hear from you. But first of all, let me ask you a question. Have you ever felt yourself falling for someone, but then thought, no, I can't because they are not from my race or my religion? Have you ever battled with your own prejudice when it comes to falling in love? So, my guest this episode did exactly that. Sandeep Kaur went on her own journey from prejudice to love. She's written a book about it called Love and Prejudice, and she's joining me now on the podcast live from LA to tell me more about it. Hi, Sandeep.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, and I'm so glad that we could do this.
Me too. I've never done anything live like this in this format, so I'm like, what do I do with my face?
You know
It
what?
was
Just act normal. That's all. Just act.
that was a great intro. Thank you. Like very concise.
Well, you know what? I read your book, and I just want to say well done because I mean, the fact that you wrote it and, have got it out there, the research that was put into it, because it was deep and you did a lot of research for this, right?
I did so much research and it was actually really hard to figure out what to put in and what to keep out. I ended up cutting out probably like 40 Word document pages, so probably 100 actual book pages of research. Um, I realized that just because I had it here didn't mean that everyone was going to digest it. So I had to be really careful with what I picked for the book, but it
Mm.
was very extensive.
Right. So it's called Love and Prejudice. So can you just kind of tell people about the themes that are in it?
Yeah, so it's called Love and Prejudice because it does a little bit of a deep dive into my relationship with my partner Mel, and just the depth of my love for him and me getting pregnant as a byproduct of my love for him. But it also does dive into my own history of prejudice in conjunction with the prejudice from my own community. So I think that's what makes my book a little bit unique in the sense that, we talk a lot about anti Blackness in the South Asian community, but not a lot of people are willing to go out there and say, yes, I am prejudiced, I am racist. And here are some examples that show you how. And some of the examples that I use are, you know, some people were pretty shocked that I included them in the book. But I think they're important because they really highlight the depth of my ignorance with regards to the reality of the existence of the prejudice. So I think Love and Prejudice perfectly encapsulates the two main themes of the book, which was we have prejudice and the reality of that, but how love forced me to face that and untangle myself from it. And it's a constant. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I'm fully prejudice free because I don't think that's real.
But then is anyone? Because we all have grown up with certain, like, I
No.
mean, it's just being judgmental in a way, right? And I mean, it's another thing on which you can judge someone.
Yes, and also I don't think that we'll ever come across every single situation in the world that is going to challenge our prejudice. So I don't know what situations I haven't come into yet where I'm going to have that gut reaction, especially when you're learning, you're being taught narratives from birth. They become so integrated into our perception of the world that they become kind of gut instinctual reactions. And part of the unlearning process is recognizing it and stepping back from it. But because they're so inherent in the fabric of our development, I think it's really, really unrealistic for people to say, yeah, I'm completely prejudice free. I'm not racist at all. I have a black partner or whatever partner from whatever race. I I think that's really unrealistic.
It's quite a big deal for you to kind of put your hands up in this book, right? For on behalf of yourself and your family, and to be like, do you know what? We have been racist to black people, because that's basically what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's like uncomfortable thing that like most Asian people, South Asians reading that will be like, I am too. But then, nobody will actually admit it and people will pretend that they're fine.
Yeah, actually, I got it. It was the nicest message I've woken up to in a while. I got a message from a gentleman who came across my book when I published it. I was marketing it on LinkedIn, and he texted me because I had met him in briefly when he reached out to me about the book prior, and he was like, I'm half Chinese. I'm Chinese and white. One of my parents is Chinese. One of my parents is white. And when I read your book, I was like, oh my gosh, I can relate to a lot of these things. These are the things I thought growing up. And I had no idea how little I knew about the Black experience. And just reading your words made me face those same parts in myself. So it's uncomfortable. And a lot of the people in our community, I think because we have this narrative of the challenges and the struggles of the immigrant experience, we believe we're one of the group of people who struggles. And yes, it's true, but we haven't teased out the nuances in our experiences and recognized that there is no equivalence. And I think part of the problem is also that in the South Asian culture, we don't really talk about feelings. We don't talk about uncomfortable things. We, especially in the diaspora, we seek proximity to whiteness and filling out all these boxes of being like the good girl, the good boy, sticking to the rules and going by the book. And saying I'm racist is not in our DNA.
Yeah, because you pretend that you pretend.
Yeah, it's really uncomfortable. And even my parents, like to this day, they've come such a long way. And I don't dive into this too much in the book because I didn't want it to be a distraction. But when I left my ex-husband, I disowned my family. I basically said, you have the option to, grow and be in my life or not, but I don't actually need you and I'm leaving. So I ran away back to New York. And I'm so grateful that they were willing to step up and grow to learn why I needed to separate myself from the community. But I'm really lucky they did that work. But even now they still struggle. Their granddaughter is Black and Indian, and I'm constantly correcting them and saying, okay, that's not okay for you to say. That's racist, or that's a trope we can't feed into, Daddy. Like, better, so you have to do better. And he adores my daughter. He is the grandpa of the year. We take her to baby gym, and all the people at baby gym know my dad. Like, oh my God, he's so good with your daughter. And even he will say things like in Punjabi, will like, "Kinna kali lagdi hai," like she looks so Black today, or like cracking
Really?
on Jemima jokes, or like, "Oh, sari hoy," like "Mu sari hoy hoy," whatever, like.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Daddy, no. So, even the people who are on the path of becoming better and educating themselves, even they have moments of being pulled back into that prejudiced way, or that stereotyped way of viewing the community.
Because I mean, it's been from birth, right? So this
Absolutely.
kind of thing has been from birth. I've heard a lot of stuff, growing up, and yeah, I have, and like uncomfortable things, and it's like that unlearning thing. Like my own parents have grown as well, so but it is, I don't know, it's bad, and maybe myself, because I think you've really looked at yourself and um about, like, things that you used to do and things that you're unlearning. I probably haven't, but maybe if I looked at myself, there probably would be things that would be a bit like, but talking about that whole unlearning thing, what kind of things did you have to unlearn? Like, were you one of those people who was like, "Can I touch your hair?" to a Black person? Because
I
I'm not gonna lie, I have done that, but it was 20 years ago, and I have evolved since then.
was it before you met your husband?
No.
Oh, really? So
I think I probably said that to somebody in his family, and to this day, they probably hold it against me, but,
I want to hear about your story as well. So I've never, well, the reality is I was never really exposed to Black people until I left my marriage. And then my introduction to cultures outside of my own, and I had friends who were from Iran and Syria and different countries within Asia, and so I wasn't just with Punjabi people, but there is something very unique about Black culture. And so when I say different cultures, I mean specifically, I wasn't really exposed to Black culture or Black people, period, until I left my marriage. And when I left my marriage, I kind of immediately walked into a friendship with a woman from St. Lucia who was Black. And prior to that, I don't think I ever would have asked to touch anyone's hair. I think that was an intuitive thing because I didn't like people commenting on me. Like white people were always talking about me and how exotic I was and my features
Yeah.
and my hair, that I think intuitively I just didn't want to ever do that to someone else. But because of this friendship that, it became very deep very fast, I didn't have to ask to touch her hair. She was like, here is my hair. Do you want to learn how I take care of it? And in the process of growing in this friendship, I learned like Black hair is a very sensitive, charged
Yeah.
subject, and it has been weaponized against the Black community horribly. Um, and I think just because of that, I've never been like, oh, can I touch your hair? When I met my partner, he loves when I touch his hair and scratch it. So he's taught me how to like, scratch it in a certain way to go with his waves. And no, I haven't, but I've done a lot of worse things.
You don't want things.
Yeah, I've like thought worse things. Like I was one of those people and I'll say this openly, when George Floyd was the face of the Black Lives Matters movement in America, I struggled like, why is it him? He's done XYZ. He was on drugs, he held a gun to someone's head, and I completely missed the point.
Were
Like, no,
you with your partner at this point?
I was, and I'm very lucky in the sense that I have a partner who, there are people who are in relationships with Black people who have these thoughts and these intuitive thoughts, and they keep them to themselves and like try to figure out on their own. Whereas I have a partner who's very, very, very open, and he knows that I'm hungry to tackle every part of myself that I think is still stuck in a backward way of thinking. And so I said to him, listen, like, here's what my gut reaction is. How do I untangle myself from this? Because I'm recognizing that, you know, that doesn't mean anyone deserves to die.
Mm-hmm.
And even we had there in Los Angeles, it's so tragic. There was this teacher who was tased to death. I think he was either 29 or 31. This happened a couple of months ago, and it was horrible. And I found out when I was reading one of the reports that he had cocaine in his system. And my immediate reaction was like, oh, well, he was on drugs. And then I had to step back and be like, your white roommate in New York regularly did cocaine when she was going to her rich little parties in Manhattan. Did she deserve to get tased to death?
Yeah.
So even here, I have a daughter who is Black and Indian, and I'm still, to this day, confronting these gut reactions.
Yeah.
So, and in my mind, I think that's worse than asking if I can touch someone's hair, because there's still still a small part of me that will immediately rationalize inhumanity and dehumanizing, and then I have to be like, whoa, what are you doing?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, yeah. I mean, at least you're actually uh do say, what are you doing? And kind of confront yourself, as it were. But in your book, like, like I spoke to you before briefly, and I said it was shocking in some ways. And the things that I thought were shocking were things like I probably wasn't really that aware of, that you really looked into, like, um just the Black people's history in America and how it's so different from maybe like people like you who your family were immigrants, but you went from, it was your own choice, your family's own choice to go
You
there,
chose
started a
to be
business and
here.
everything, and how the Jim Crow laws and all this kind of thing. So it helped me to understand that a bit more, because I feel like I fully never understood it before. So that was really interesting to me, but just shocking the way that, when you think about it, and you don't really think about it too much as an Indian immigrant, because our family's the same. Like, my granddad came to the UK, couldn't read or write properly, opened
Mhm.
businesses, and it's like, work hard, open businesses, buy houses. Oh yeah, you can live the dream, do what you want and everything. But then, this whole thing of like thousands of people being taken to a place against their will. And then, even when slavery was over, the fact that these laws kind of made sure that it was still going on, even though it was technically over. So, I mean, I found that really interesting and also just really horrifying, actually.
It was less than 100 years ago where a person could go to jail for having a kid with a black person, playing checkers with a black person, having their hair cut by a black person. Even in America now, California is the only state that makes it illegal to discriminate against a black person for their natural hair. In different states in America, if a black person wears their hair naturally and it's deemed unprofessional, technically, it's not against the law to not hire that person.
Wow.
And like this is like literally like I washed my hair. It's still a little bit wet. It's drying. Can you imagine being told by the world that the way your hair grows out of your head is not okay?
Mm.
And because of that, I'm going to withhold an opportunity from you to advance in the world, to pay your bills, to build yourself professionally. And that there's that chapter, it's the Blue-Eyed Boys and the Vagina Monologue. That kind of was the heart of my book, where that conversation with that Jewish boy, where I was basically like, you know, what about us? Like, what about me? I've been spit on. I'm 33 years old. I've been sexually assaulted because I'm Indian. I've been physically assaulted because I'm Indian. I've been spit on. I've been bullied. I've been ridiculed. I've been mocked. My manager at a Fortune 500 company spoke to me in an Indian accent because he thought it was funny. Okay,
Wow.
so I have all of these examples of experiencing violence and discrimination as a result of my skin. And I use that as a reason to justify my own prejudice against the Black community. Like, oh, look what my people go through and look where we are. My dad worked so hard to give me a good education. And, you know, the Black community, they have all the same resources we have. We struggled too. But I didn't know that was the American dream is the American dream for the people who come here with luxury and the privilege of upward mobility. It is not something that is accessible for people who have literally poured their blood and their sweat and their actual bones into the foundation of this country. Like I write about it in my book. There are actual enslaved people actually had their teeth pulled to make dentures for the wealthy.
And yeah, and this is one
Their
of the things where I was like,
hair,
what the
yeah,
hell? Yeah.
their hair was used to stuff furniture. So
Did you want to write this book like after you had certain conversations with your partner?
you know, when I had originally started, I've always wanted to. I've always been writing. I wrote this article called "I'm Indian, He's Black: My Journey from Prejudice to Love" on a platform called Medium, and it went viral. And I realized, wow, this is a conversation that people are interested in hearing, and not a lot of people are talking about it. And I had been toying with the idea of writing a book, and then I found out I was pregnant. So we had planned on having a baby, but we had planned down the road. And she decided to manifest in our lives way earlier than we planned.
Mhm.
And when I found out I was pregnant, I got so scared because I was just like, I I know I am a source of gossip right now because my partner is Black. And now I am having this baby. I've always wanted to be a mother. I'm very protective. And I just kept thinking to myself, what is the world I will be bringing this child into? And how can I expect my community to grow and to evolve without showing them how I grew and evolved? Set the example. And I had gone to therapy for a while because my upbringing was very different from Melvin's. We had very different lived experiences, and it was hard for me to grapple with some of the experiences he'd had. So I found a Black therapist who helped basically change my life completely. And he said to me, "Your child will be Black." And I was like, no, 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 they're going to be Indian and they're going to be Black when we have kids. No, no, no. And he's like, no, 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 no. The world is going to see them as Black. Your community will see your child as Black. And when I found out I was pregnant, I just thought, I need to do something. And the solution was, I have this gift of writing, let me write a book and try to set a good example.
I mean, I think it's awesome that you did that, just, wanting to make a change and you actually did something. So that's so cool. And how did you feel though, like in your heart when somebody told you that, this child that you are going to have, that is obviously part of you and part of your partner, is people won't really see this kid as Indian? Like, how did that make you feel?
I still struggle with it. I still to this day struggle with it because she looks like her dad. She's lighter skinned, but she looks like her dad. She has a black nose. She has hair that sticks straight out of her head. It's like they're soft, loose curls, but Melvin will say like she's gonna have a little bit of a baby fro because it goes outward. It doesn't go down curls. It goes out. And I look at her and I see my child, and it's only when Melvin will be like, "Oh, that's my black baby," and I'd be like, "Oh, right, race. You are black." And the question of identity is one I talk a lot about in my book. And I think my anxieties over not knowing what it was like to be a black person in this country, but having a child who will likely identify herself as black, it hit its peak when one of Mel's black friends, who we don't really speak to anymore, told us that she did not think our child would be black because
Oh,
I was Indian.
and was this a black person that said this?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Is it, you wrote about it in the book, actually? Yeah.
Yeah, she was like, "Your child is not black, she's biracial." And Melvin was like, "I'm black. My kid's gonna be black. My kid's also gonna be Indian. She's gonna be both." But the friend was like, "No, she is as black as Kamala Harris is black. Obama is not black. They call themselves black, but they're not black." And then that I asked that person, like, who are you to say what my child's identity is? If my child grows up and is treated by the world as if she's black, she identifies as black, who are you to say she's not? And I think as a brown woman who grew up in a predominantly white community, who was never Indian enough because I assimilated so hard to be accepted at school, who was never Indian enough for home, but never white enough for the world,
Mm.
and I had the struggle with identity, I still have so much anxiety over my child's identity. I actually just hired a Punjabi tutor because I'm like, I need to get my Punjabi back. I've been cooking Punjabi food. We're going to be listening to Punjabi music. Like, I'm going to immerse you in all things Punjabi so I gave this part of your identity to you. You have the option of co-opting it for yourself. And that's all I can do, right?
Yeah. No, that's cool. Yeah. I mean, I relate to that completely because, obviously I have 3 daughters, and I was when I was pregnant, I did say to my husband, I was like, "Oh, are they going to be confused? Like, is that what our kids are going to be? Just like, who are we, and do we belong anywhere, and all this kind of thing." You do think that,
Mm-hmm.
and like for me, because I think I'm quite desi as a person. Um, which was why a lot of people were quite shocked that I probably didn't get married to somebody from India or something like that. But so the things that I've always done, I keep doing them. So they are influenced by a lot of my culture, I think. And they've been to India a couple of times and stuff. But it is that you do have to make that effort if you want them to be exposed to the culture, to like the language and everything like that, because like I speak Punjabi to them as much as I can, and it's extra effort, obviously, because, you and your partner are not talking in Punjabi, so it's an extra effort to then talk to your child in Punjabi, right? You have to remember, oh, I must do that. I must do that. It's
Yeah.
another thing. But then I think I won't forgive myself if I don't do it. Like, I have to try.
That's how I feel, because a part of me, I don't resent my parents, but I definitely give them a hard time over the fact that they did not encourage us to speak Punjabi and to maintain that connection with my culture. And when in my marriage, I was with my ex-husband for almost 8 years, and we would speak Punjabi to each other all the time. We were very tapped into the culture, and he was kind of the anchor into my Punjabi-ness, And when
Mm.
I left him, I shed all of it. I basically just discarded that whole identity Punjabi identity just to get
Right.
away. And I couldn't, leaving him was one of the hardest things I've ever done because I still loved him when I left him.
Mm.
And getting over him, he met a Gordy like 6 months later, and it
Really?
took me. And it was funny because I was actually never Indian enough for him either. At our wedding, I couldn't sing some of the Punjabi songs, and he made fun of me for it. And then he ended up with a white woman, which I thought was really funny. But it took me a few years actually to truly heal enough to even conceive of being with someone else. And part of that healing journey was I had to remove myself from my culture, not just because I realized how problematic it was from a social justice perspective, from a female oppression perspective, but also because it reminded me of my ex-husband.
Right.
So now that I'm a mother, I am easing back into connecting to my own culture because I don't want my daughter to say, I don't know who I am.
Mm.
I have Punjabi blood, but I don't know my culture. I am very committed to, I have been also very committed to understanding Black culture and to exposing myself to as much Black culture as possible. And Melvin is a very, very involved father. His mother is very, very involved in our daughter's life. So my hope is to expose her to both, but because I'm still reacquainting myself to Punjabi culture, and I do have that fear that like I'm not going to speak to her enough in Punjabi. I'm not going to cook her enough food. So as she grows up, she's still going to have that like disassociation from what it means to actually be Punjabi.
Do your parents have a lot to do with you guys? And, are things good in that way? Are they
Oh
part
yeah,
of it?
absolutely. They are very, very involved. My mother doesn't live here. She lives in a different state. She lives in Arizona. My father's very involved. It took time for them to wrap their minds around my divorce. My dad actually he wanted to pay me to stay married. He was like,
Hey,
he's like, I'll get you an apartment in the city because I lived in West Sacramento at the time. He's like, I'll get you an apartment in the city. You don't have to live with him. You can have your own life and work on your marriage from a distance. What is the salary of the job you're getting? I'll pay you that salary to stay.
oh my
Um,
gosh.
and I was just like, Daddy, like, I'm literally cutting myself because I'm so unhappy. Like, I'm not staying in this marriage. And when I think seeing how far and fast I was willing to run away from them, they realized that they had to change and grow if they wanted to keep me because I had made it clear to them that I was done living my life. I'd always been the good girl of all my family members, of all the cousins, especially in America. I've always been the good girl. Like I've always stayed out of trouble. I didn't date boys. I got good grades. I went to like the top brand name schools. And this was like oh my God, what is Sandeep doing? Like finally she's rebelling. What? you know?
Yeah.
Um, and it made them uncomfortable when I started dating African men. And I say African specifically because these were men who were from Africa or the Caribbean, African or Caribbean men.
Mhm.
And my mom said, like, she's just a phase. You're just having fun. Get out of your system. And then when I met Melvin, and I was like, Mama, this isn't a phase. Like, this is my partner. Um, I do think a part of her was kind of surprised. Uh,
Mhm.
but at that point, she and my father had done therapy. They'd done a lot of work on themselves and gotten to know Melvin. They were just like, you know what? You did everything we wanted you to do, and you were suicidal. At this point, we want you to be happy. And if this person is treating you well, bust. That's it. Um,
Okay.
in between, though, there were things that were said. I had a partner. My mother, may have used the N word when she described him. So, so,
Oh dear.
so getting to that point before Melvin, there was definitely work. But by the time that I met him, they had done so much of the work that it was just kind of, all right, well, it is what it is. And now they love him more than they love me.
I mean, that is quite a journey though, from like, using an N word
Oh,
to using the N
absolutely.
word for an ex partner. Like that is quite bad, and that is a big journey. And like even for me, like because it took time for my parents to come around to the fact that I wanted to marry my husband, um, and they said things as well, which I think they either have forgotten or like would like to, just pretend that they never said or whatever,
Yeah.
because we've come such a long way. And even like, because I don't think, I don't really talk about that to my kids. Like, I always joke. I'm like, oh yeah, we had an arranged marriage, and they know it's a joke, of course. But I don't really, I wouldn't want them to know those things because my parents are so involved, and do you know what I mean? They would feel a
Yeah.
little bit
Yeah.
odd
And
about it.
I did think a lot about that as I was writing the book, which was like, oh my gosh, my child. We didn't know if we were gonna have a boy or a girl till she was born, um, but like, oh my gosh, my child is gonna be old enough one day to read this book and realize what Mama thought and what Nanaji used to say, and like, do I want that for her? And I talked a lot about it with Mel, and he was basically just like, our child is going to be so loved, and they're going to grow up to see why you did what you did, and to show what it means to grow and to evolve as a person. You're setting an example, and we don't our child isn't going to grow up with rose tinted glasses. Like, I forget who I was talking to. It was a Know Your Rights Camp, which is an organization in America that basically empowers and educates Black and Brown youth on how to navigate the legal system and what to do when they're confronted by the authorities. Actually, all the profits from the book, my book sales, are being donated to them. But they were thinking about, like, what if we include your book as part of like the backpacks we give out? And I remember saying, like, well, I don't want the kids to read the book because I say horrible things about Black people in there. And they're like, this is nothing they haven't heard before. Like, they're exposed to this all the time, and the way you're presenting it is through a journey of growth. And that's kind of the perspective that Mel and I have taken with this, is like,
Yeah.
Ishani is going to grow up very aware of the state of the world. We're going to protect her in the sense that no one is going to harm her. She's going to be psychologically safe within our home and within the community we build for her, but we're not putting on rose tinted glasses for her. I want her to grow up as a warrior. I want her to grow up ready to fight
Yeah.
for what is right, to fight for people who look like her, for people who are from the Black community, from people who are from oppressed communities. I want her to fight. And in order to fight, to be a fighter, to be a warrior, you have to know what's going on. So that's kind of how we approached it.
Mm. When you started dating your partner, did you did you ever think like, okay, you're really cool, I'm really into you, but I don't know because you are a different
Mhm.
race. But then, you know,
To this day, and I say this, so everything I say to people, they get kind of shocked that, like, oh my God, you talk about this with your partner. And we have a very, very radically transparent relationship. So we just had this conversation a month ago where I said a part of me still grieves the fact that I'm not with a Punjabi man, because that's a whole part of my identity that I'm not losing, but that I'm not necessarily nurturing with my life partner. And there's a part of me you'll never truly be able to access or truly be able to see or understand, because you are not Punjabi. So
mm.
I'm talking to
And you have had that as well though with your ex-husband. Like
yeah,
obviously you got away from him for a reason, you weren't happy, but you did have that
and I
the
know what it's
thing,
like
right?
I
Yeah.
know what it's like to be out in public and to laugh and crack a joke in Punjabi, or to mutter something about someone you're around in Punjabi, and like, you know, to hear music and to automatically feel your shoulders start to move. Like, there's that connection that you cannot have with another person because they are not from your culture. And when I chose Melvin as my life partner, I recognized that I'm not going to say that I sacrificed that, but I willingly closed that part of my life. Because when you have a life partner, when you have a romantic partnership, and a partnership with the person with whom you're raising a child, it's a
Mm.
very unique relationship. And it taps into parts of yourself that other friendships and relationships don't. But when you're in a relationship with a person who's from a different culture, doesn't speak your language, doesn't understand your food, it is like a part of you that they're never really going to see.
God, that this is quite deep. Like I feel a bit like, oh, tearing up. No, but
You
it's
know,
true. I haven't had that experience of kind of being in a relationship or married to somebody who was Punjabi. So I don't know. It's not like, it's a thing that I had and then I lost. And I can understand how it was that was for you because you experienced it, and the Indian in-laws and all this kind of thing. But I'm not gonna lie, I did actually, I've had times where, I got really sad at one point because I thought, oh no, you can't appreciate Gurdas Man's music the way I do and don't understand how much it literally like touches my soul. Or like, I grew up watching Hindi movies and I kind of thought when I get married, I'm going to have a mother-in-law standing there doing my aarti and all this and putting tel at the door for me to come in. And then, you do get married and you're like, hello, like, where's the tel
see,
and where's the aarti?
I had that, and
Yes.
I had that, and it's so like I still grieve that. Like my ex mother-in-law was amazing. One of the reasons I married my ex-husband was because I loved her so much.
Oh,
Actually, it took me longer to get over her than it took me to get over my ex-husband. Like I feel like crying just thinking about her now. And I honestly, like this was 3 weeks ago. I started crying in the car because I was like, oh my God, Melvin, like she's not really tapped. She's not really a part of our community. Like my family members don't really, talk to their family members, but like, what if she finds my book and she reads it? That's gonna make me so sad to like for her to. I'm gonna start crying now.
oh no,
Like
don't.
this is. I don't want her to think that is all I took from her. You know what I mean? Like, and I was watching your reel the other day when you had the banda, like you brought the
Oh,
patila, and then I was like, aki aki, I have them. Like our partners will never understand just how funny that is.
yeah.
Because there are certain things that like when you translate over into English, it's just not the same.
No, but you know what? I will say that your daughter will understand
You think
because
so?
yes, because let me tell you something, right? So I've got three daughters, and I at one point before I had kids, I used to like try and force my husband to watch Hindi films, and like he did watch some of them, and liked some of them and whatever.
Melvin falls asleep within 2 minutes.
Oh, well, they are long. And so he did. But then I kind of thought, oh, do you know what? It'd be so nice if I had like little girls and we could sit here like watching things together. And they do. Like we will literally we'll make jokes about, that include dialogues of Kabhi Khushi Kabhi Gum, of DDL.
Really?
Oh my gosh. Yeah,
How
like
old are your daughters?
so 13, 12, and 6.
Wow. Okay.
And honestly, like part of our humor is those things, you know, the videos that I make, they might like my husband gets them, but they get them as well. I really get them. And, a lot of the, we'll yeah, funny dialogues from Hindi movies and things like that because they're quite into that. Um
My name's Pooh.
yeah, oh my god, oh my gosh. All of the literally, like, Gubby Cushy Gubby Gum, all of Pooh's dialogue are just littered in our everyday conversation. So, you know what I mean? You will have that, and we talk about, our trips to India, and, like, obviously, my husband has been as well, but, um, it's different for them because it's like, when you have 'cause he is going as somebody he went as somebody who was black and stuck out because he's 6'3", a huge black guy and twice the size of everybody else. Plus, like, there it's not very diverse in India. You know what I mean? So, but then they went there as people who've got an Indian mum.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So it's kind of like, okay, maybe, you said things like, um, they might not be accepted and people might be like, "Oh, you're actually black." But you know what? For you to know that I've got an Indian mum and I do actually belong here. I have an Indian mum. I am Indian and I will wear a lenga and all this and feel nice and I'll, you know what I mean? Wear my Indian jewelry and my bindis and feel proud of myself because that's what they do. They do that. And
Really?
yeah, that's and so, so when your daughter grows up, the way that you're bringing her up by the sounds of it, and the exposure that she has to your culture and the exposure that she has to your family, it will happen and it will be really nice because you will have somebody to celebrate Diwali with and things like that because you'll have taught her and she'll have learned and she will feel like it's a part of her
I
because
hope
that's what I found.
I hope so because I don't really talk to my family here. Like my dad has an uncle and a brother and a sister, my bua and my chacha, and they live within 20 minutes of me, and I haven't seen them in 10 years. And my bua actually has like spread rumors about me and my partner to India. So
As Indian families love to do, don't they? Yeah.
But I'm really privileged in the sense that I have a few cousins who I've reconnected with, and they love Ishani and they love Mel. And so my hope is, as Ishani gets older, and Melvin and I do want to have more children, I can also tap into the Desi community in LA that's not necessarily blood related to me, and create a community for myself.
Yeah.
And it is selfish because I'm not just going in like I care about you as people, but like I want you to be here for my daughter. Like I have an ulterior motive.
Yeah. Yeah. But, I think when you do have kids, and, especially like when they start going to school and things like that, your community does grow. Because I remember like me and my husband, when we moved into the flat that we used to live in, like when we got married, all we cared about was, where's the tube stop? How long does it take us to get into central London? Where's the motorway? That's it. And then you don't care about anything else. And when you have kids, it's like, oh, where are the schools? Where's this? Where's the library? Blah, blah, blah. And then, you do end up building a community just through what the kids are doing.
Are your
So,
parents very involved with your children?
yeah.
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 They
Yeah,
live
they
nearby?
No, they live about an hour and a half away, but like we talk to them all the time and we see them a lot. We'll go and stay there, every half term, every holiday.
Do they speak in
They'll
Punjabi to your children?
No, they don't.
No.
No. And I want them to, and you know what? My Punjabi is quite good. And the reason it is good is because I spoke Punjabi before I spoke English, because we used to live with my grandparents and we used to live with extended family who all spoke Punjabi. And I spent a lot of time with my nanny. So therefore, there was that whole, speaking Punjabi, and then my parents everybody would speak Punjabi around me. Whereas now my grandma's passed away, and they just don't. I've spoken English with my parents, and I say to them, can you teach these kids Hindi and Punjabi, please? Because they're very good at Hindi and Punjabi. And they'll do it for 2 minutes and then they'll forget.
Oh my God, I know. My dad will call Ishani Kato, my little Kato, like little squirrel Kato, Kato. But everything is in English. And I'm like, Daddy, my dad speaks like amazing Urdu, Hindi, Punjabi. Like he has like ikdam tet Punjabi too.
Yeah.
Like you would have no idea he's been here for like 40 years. And when he speaks, when I hear him and my dada speaking in Punjabi, like I just feel so grounded. I don't know what they're saying like 75% of the time because it's like so intense and fast. But I'm like, okay, I know you speak Punjabi regularly, Papa. Like, why are you not speaking into Ishani?
Yeah. My dad does things like, I say, oh, please, can you speak Punjabi? And he goes, Punjabi Andiya? And they go, Hanji. And he goes, oh, that's amazing. Great. And I'm like, and they do, yeah, Andiya, because I've been teaching them, and it takes a bit more than just asking them
Did you
that.
put them in Punjabi school? Or like
No, I
school?
haven't. No, I haven't put them in Punjabi school. I'm just trying to, yeah, I'm just teaching them myself. And I think because they do like Hindi films and that kind of thing, and they are exposed to, the extended family, they'll hear bits and then they're picking up bits of Hindi, like understanding's quite good as well. Because I just feel like you're going to be realistic as well. Like I know that they're not going to be fluent in Punjabi. They're just not. It's just not going to happen
Well, I'm
unless we.
not fluent in Punjabi, so how can she be fluent in Punjabi?
Well, this is the thing. It's like, you have to kind of, with me, I had to say to myself, okay, be realistic. They're not going to be fluent in Punjabi, but they can have a good understanding of it. And if they can say, basic things, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's they'll have a bit of understanding. They're not going to be like her when someone asks them something. Because I did not want them to go to India and someone says something to them like, oh, ਤੁਸੀਂ roti khani, or something basic things, and they're like, what? Like looking at, I was just a bit like, I don't want that. You know what I mean? I want them to have a very good understanding, even if you speak back and it's very heavily English accented, doesn't matter.
How does your husband how does your husband not respond, but feel when you guys are speaking in Punjabi or Hindi? Like, I would love to learn more about your relationship with your husband and how it contributes to like the cultural upbringing of your children.
Um, I think he's used to it, and this is the thing as well, because my husband, because and that's why I felt a little bit like our stories are have got similarities, but they're quite different in a way as well. Because he is of Ghanaian descent, like his parents were like came over from there and stuff, and some of his siblings were born there, so they came over later, and they themselves um English is not their first language, so they've got very like a strong African accent when they talk. But anyway, so he was brought up with his own language, as in not
Sweet,
understanding it
right?
all.
Sweet
Yeah,
and
yeah,
gut.
yeah. Yes, exactly, exactly. And so he's used to hearing other people speaking a different language around him. And I think
Does he speak to your children in
no,
tweet?
he doesn't.
No.
No, because their parents didn't want them to have an African accent, and
Mm,
so they wanted them to just speak English. So they weren't really encouraged to speak it or learn it or anything. Um, and so he doesn't. I think he understands basic and can speak basic, but it's not the way I speak Punjabi. And but I think it's made him very kind of accepting of people can speak different languages around you, might not understand, but you'll get the gist of it. And I think he's actually picked up some Punjabi, and I think he knows more than he lets on because he
yeah,
pretends.
especially if he grew up around it. Because Melvin, he grew up in the South. Like he's the first Black man that I dated. All the other men I dated, I said were either Caribbean or African. And two of my
Mm,
most serious relationships were with men who were either from Ghana or who were Ghanaian, whose parents were from Ghana.
right.
Um, and that is one of the reasons I would date these men, is because they had that cultural richness and that
Yeah.
background and the flavor and the spice to their food and to the way that they
Yeah.
spoke and to their clothes and their garb. Um, but they weren't Indian, and I needed like separation from Indian people.
Right.
But do you
But
does
it is like that. It is. I do find that there are those similarities. So I can understand what you're saying.
yeah, because and he probably enjoys Indian food, Punjabi food, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So Melvin, I have to like be very picky with what I make for him because he didn't grow up eating different kinds of foods. He didn't, I introduced him to Thai food and to Indian into different
Right.
cuisines. Um, but it'd be really awesome to like, I don't know, learn more about Black culture so I could also bring that into the kitchen and not just be like, you're Punjabi and here's Punjabi food and here's hip hop music because you're Black, but like truly understand more about like the
Right.
South. And I got a couple of books on like R&B music and on soul music. And Melvin's mother, for Ashani's first birthday, cooked like authentic Southern food. And I want to offer both of these to Ashani, but it's also so hard because it's like I have a job and I have a home to take care of. I also have like my own life. Like I need to work out and do my writing, and it's just like so much.
But you know what? If this makes you feel better, I only started cooking Ghanaian food, like bothering to even learn, about 2 years ago,
Oh, really?
and we've actually been together for 20 years.
Wow, you've been together for 20 years? Damn. You look like you're my age.
No, I'm a bit older than you. But yeah, I was a child bride. No, yeah, we've been together for 20 years, and I've only over the last couple of years bothered to learn from my sister-in-law how to cook.
What changed for you that you made you want to start cooking?
Because it was lockdown and we and we were like, "Oh,
I love that
food
honesty.
let's cook food from different cuisines, kids, to keep ourselves busy." And my husband was like, "What the hell are you doing? Like, why don't you actually try to cook Ghanaian food since, like, this is a Indian and Ghanaian family?" And it was like, "Oh, yeah, why don't we do that?" It was such an obvious thing to do. And then, like, my sister-in-law actually, she kind of taught me before, but I was just kind of, "Oh, okay, fine, I'll make that one day." And then I was like, "Oh, I really wanna learn." And he was so happy, like, it was so nice because it wasn't the greatest at first, but he was actually like, "Oh, wow, you've actually bothered to learn to make this." And and then my kids were like, "Oh, yeah, we love jollof rice," and all, and now it's a standard thing. It's like a
I
standard thing.
love that.
And when, my family come over, like, when we have gatherings and my family come over, um, they actually they're like, "Oh, have you not made jollof rice? Where is it?"
Really? So what
Like, yeah,
was your family accepting? What is your husband's name?
Tony.
Tony, was your family accepting of Tony from the beginning, or was it something they had to get used to?
They had to get used to it. Yeah, I think it took about a year from, oh, you're going out with someone black, and oh my god, like what's happening, and why are you doing this, and you're going to be ostracized and all this kind of thing, and just
Well,
the fear of it all, trying to dissuade me, all this kind of stuff. I didn't really have that. uh I don't think I had that fear of I'm going to get disowned, because I've spoken about this with my husband sometimes and been very honest, and the fact that if I had thought I'm going to get disowned, I don't know if I would have then gone down this route, because I'm yeah, because I am so close to my family, and always have. We're very close as a family, and I've been that good girl as well, and and I was happy to do that, and they knew that about me, and okay, we've taught a sense and all this kind of thing, and they gave us a moderate kind of amount of freedom and whatever, but I knew that they're not gonna disown me, and if they did, how would I then cope? Because then it's like, I feel like maybe we might have been that couple where in every argument I would have been like, "Well, I gave up my whole family for you,
yeah,
and now
yeah,
you have to meet every single thing to me."
yeah,
That's quite
yeah.
a big thing to put on somebody,
No,
and
no.
I would have definitely said things like that. I know I would have.
How old were you when you met him?
Um, 23, 23.
So he was probably one of your first serious relationship then.
Yeah, 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 exactly, exactly, and it would, and then that was the kind of phase where they were like, "Oh, we're looking for rishte for you," and all this kind of stuff, which I was quite open to, and it's only because of the fact that they were like, "Oh, don't you want to meet this rishta?" And I thought you were into this and whatever, and I was like, "No, no, no," and then they kind of found out, and then um it was just, like I said, dissuading, "Oh, what are you doing? Blah, blah, blah. What your kid's gonna be," all this stuff. You know what it's like,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
All this
yeah,
stuff
yeah,
to dissuade
yeah.
you, which I did have to think about, which is a very confusing time, because you do have to think about these things, and,
Especially
you
at
know
that age. Like
yeah,
when I was 20, I was a young 23. Like I was a late bloomer when it came to self advocacy and understanding who I actually was. When I was
right,
23, I was a child. When I was 23, I very much stayed in my relationship even though I knew that it wasn't right for me because my parents loved him and he was like the perfect Punjabi jet boy, you know?
right, yeah,
So I totally feel
yeah.
that.
I mean, ideally, like, everybody kind of, well, most people would like to marry somebody who their parents approve of and they're best friends with and all this kind of stuff, and, so I had to think about it. It was quite a lot, like, a lot of turmoil inside for me as well, to be like, "Oh, it's not gonna be like this. Are you okay with that?" You know what I mean? Um, but I think things changed when they were so scared of, like, "Oh, what's everyone gonna say? This, that." And then, my grandmas, my dadi and my nanny, who were both alive at that time, then they kind of told them, "Oh, this is what she's wants to do and all this." And they just said, "You know what?" Both of them, they were in different countries, India, and then, nanny was in England, dadi was in India, and they both said the same, something along the same lines of, "Oh, is he, educated? Is he from a good family? Is he a good boy? Does he treat her well?"
Wow.
Literally those things. They were like, "Yes, yes, yes." They were like, "We'll just let her marry him then." That's literally,
That is unheard of. I cannot tell you, Rena,
I know, game changers.
how many women, like I would easily say dozens and dozens, like dozens and dozens of women have either emailed me or DM'd me on Instagram or somehow found me on LinkedIn or another social media platform to just ask me like, how did I do it? I live in England, I live in Canada, I live here, I live there. I live in India, I live in America, and my partner is black or my partner is African and my parents don't support it. And that's wild that your daddy and your nanny back then were
Yeah,
like, let her do what she wants to do. He's a good person. Because these girls who are reaching out to me, they have good men. And my advice to them has, I think it's because like I kind of did it, which is like, listen, your family is important, but if you love this man and you leave him and you abandon your love because of your parents, and the only reason your parents don't want you to be with this man is because he is black, then what you're ultimately saying is their way of thinking is okay. Their way of thinking is right. And you are becoming part of the problem. You are abandoning a good man that you love in favor of prejudice. And if you can go to sleep at night and you're okay with that, and that's the person you want to be, accept it and own it, but look yourself in the face and recognize that that's what you're doing. And so my responses have been a little bit harsh. I'm usually like gentler with the way that I say it, because that's what I would have needed to hear if I was in my early 20s and my parents didn't want me to be with a man that I truly loved, who was truly good. I think in order for me to have made what I would think is the right decision, which is like, you can't not be with someone because they're Black, I would have had to hear it phrased in that way. Because it's one thing if it's like, he's not part of our culture, he's he can't support you. That's one thing if your parents don't support that because of that. It could be a Chinese person or a Brazilian person or a white person or a Black person. It wouldn't really matter. But if you're telling me that your parents specifically don't want you to be with a Black person, that's if you listen to them, you're
Yeah.
continuing.
And also I am I guess I'm just a true romantic, and I always think that like true love is actually not that easy to find in this world. So when you find it, you should keep hold of that. If that person is a gem and you have something that is so special, and you're going to let that go because you tick all the boxes, but you're the wrong way. Like, are you crazy?
I I I don't think I'm a romantic, but I absolutely agree with that. And this is something I like to share because most people would not share this, which is I actually left Melvin a year and a half before I got pregnant because I was like, listen, if you really want to be with me, you need to go to therapy. What we're doing right now, you have so much trauma from your background. I have so much trauma from my dad being an alcoholic and being abusive that the two of us together is just toxic. We both need to fix ourselves. So we actually separated for a few months and then we came back together and like we're even stronger. But in that interim, his business is in the events industry and it was COVID and events were like shut down, so finances were hard. So when my parents said, could he support you, and I was like, right now it's hard, we'll have to support each other. But I what I said, I was like, Mama, and mind you, my ex-husband's parents were like multimillionaires, so big difference. And when I left with nothing. I didn't take anything with me. I said to my mom and my dad, I love this man. I am so in love with his soul and with the person he is. I would rather live under a bridge with him than be with anyone else. I would rather be poor and have nothing materially with him than be with anyone else. Now, Babaji has...
You say you're not a romantic and you're saying lines like this.
Well, it was Melvin. It was him. It was him. There is something so magical about this man that there is nothing that would have prevented me from being with him. And we have gone through so much together. I've had so many people be like, why are you, it would be so much easier if you weren't with him. And now on the other side of that, I look at my friends and I'm like, I have like the healthiest relationship because we've gone through so much together and we've fought so hard to be together and we've developed this radical transparency, and there's literally nothing in the world I would not do for this man and that he would not do for me, and we've shown it to each other time and time again. So I don't think I'm a romantic, but what you said, I totally feel. Like,
yeah. I mean, I actually, because, I've been doing this podcast for a while and, broadcasting for a while and stuff on different radio stations. But I made the decision a few years ago that I'm not going to speak about my relationship anymore. And like, and that's why it's funny that we've been speaking about it now because it's normal and natural to do. And I wanted to speak to you because, I found it like I really admired the fact that you've written this book, and I wanted to support you on this and kind of hear your story and get it out there, because that's what this podcast is about, that kind of sisterhood. So and it's not for me to, it's just because we're talking that I'm talking about it. But the reason I was like, I don't want to actually talk about this anymore, I don't want to be some kind of case study experiment type person, is because I was actually part of this radio documentary, like this BBC radio documentary ages ago, and it was, I think it was called something like The Last Taboo or something like that. And you know, me and my husband were in there, and my mom and my dad, I think, about, oh, we didn't want to marry him because of blah blah blah. It's such a taboo. The whole thing was about that taboo of, you know, Indian and black love and all this kind of thing. And people that I um knew made it, and they kind of begged me to be in it, and my husband didn't want to be. And I was like, oh no, please, it's good because you can expose this and it will help people and whatever. And so he was kind of not comfortable. He's quite private. He was not comfortable about it, and then he did it. And then after that, you know, I've been on invited on like radio shows and whatever to talk. Oh, how is it for you? You're raising kids of different religions and different race, and what is it like and whatever. And I just got to a point where I'm like, I'm actually just gonna live my life. I'm going to just live my life. Like, I think what you're doing is amazing. You know, you've looked into this, you've researched this, and you're actually helping people. But I was like, I'm going to, if you want to use me as a case study, if you want to look at me and be like, oh, you know what, they're living their lives really nicely, so that's why they are the example, then that's on you. I'm happy to be that example, but I think I'm not going to be the mouthpiece anymore.
Yeah, and I think it's also different from like having someone highlight all the things that are wrong. Like you're like, this is a taboo versus like,
Mm,
look at these two cultures that are so seamlessly interwoven with each other. And
mm,
one of my beta readers had said when they read my book, like, I wish you had talked more about you and Melvin. Like, I want to hear more about your love story. And, you know, I want to hear more about how you guys met and like what you felt and all the things you went through together. And I kind of felt the same way, which was like, it's not about me and Melvin. Like, Melvin and I are not the mouthpiece, like you said, for Blindian relationships. The point of my book is to show this is why the taboo exists.
mm,
I'm not trying to highlight the taboo itself. I'm trying to highlight why the taboo exists. And that's why I dove so deeply into Black history specifically, and not necessarily into like my relationship with Melvin. I dive into casteism and colorism, but there was this like hunger, even the feedback I get from some people who reach out to me, like, I love your book, but I wish I knew more. It's like, that's not the point of the book. The point of the book is to understand why, as a community, collectively, we have these prejudices against this community. And it's not the same thing as colorism. Colorism is tied into it. Casteism does impact
mm.
color, which impacts anti-Blackness. Um, but I totally feel you. Actually, we had our book designer wanted to use a photograph of me and Melvin was like, no,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah, I think my husband would have said the exact same thing. He would not have been happy with that.
Yeah, like we and that's, you know, I've gotten I'm not sure if you've noticed, but I haven't really been marketing the book a lot, and that is because, and that's intentional. Writing the book was really hard. Revising the book was really hard. Marketing the book was really hard. I got a lot of racist shit in my message. Like, someone called my daughter the N-word. Someone told me that Black babies are stupid and grow up to be nothing. And I'm like, I am opening myself up to so much hate while I'm trying to do good.
Mm,
I wrote the book. Bus, come kita ho na.
yeah.
You know?
And when you're a mom, you must feel kind of like it's a bit scary when people say things like that, right? Because you're like, oh well, I have a child, I want to protect my kid, and I
Yeah.
don't want to know too much about her.
I had a woman email me yesterday and she was like, was your daughter a mistake? And I was
Wow.
like, she was a surprise. Like, mind your language. Words matter. She was not a mistake. She was a surprise. And she is like the center of my universe. And then it was like, your daughter's very pretty and she looks more Indian than Black. So,
Oh my god, that thing, people love, literally. There has been so many people when my kids were born, and bear in mind, this was when, you know, we weren't on Instagram or anything like that. You know, we had Facebook, I guess. I didn't know anybody else who had was married to or in a relationship with a black person, or and had kids with a black person. I didn't know anyone else, right? So everybody was like, "Oh my god, what's it gonna look like? What's the baby gonna look like? Oh yeah, she's more Indian. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. She's got your color. Oh yeah. Oh, her hair straight. Oh no, it's going curly." It was all this thing,
that's
like,
exactly the same. her hair was straight when she was born. Now it's like, ding.
Yeah. I think my dad was like, "Oh, her hair's normal." He actually went,
Well, and my
"Oh, her hair's normal." It's like,
or
well, it's curly,
one
but
one of my cousins, I don't speak the son of one of my bua that I don't speak to. Apparently, when he saw a picture of Ishani, he was like, "She's not dark." It's like, why?
I mean, the thing is that Indian people say this to a baby of two Indian people. They will say like, "Oh, you're dark and she's fair. Oh, please let the baby go on your side." You know
Yeah,
what I mean? So,
yeah.
so when you're with the actual black person, it's obviously more of a, "Oh my God, the baby better be fair. And it has to look Indian. And what's the hair going to be like?" And all this kind of stuff. And it's like, "Oh no, I think they're looking more Indian," as if it's such a big compliment, and I'm going to get really happy or something.
But you know
Or,
what's weird, Rena, is this is gonna sound so weird and take this as you will, and I don't want to offend anyone, but here we are. A part of me wishes she looked more black.
really?
Yeah. I don't know
Who's
if it's
that?
her correcting or I feel so proud of the fact that Melvin is her dad because I'm so proud of who he is as a human. And I tell him this where, I'm glad I have a kid with you because God forbid we don't end up together for the rest of our lives. You're stuck with me somehow because we have this child we have to co-parent.
Yeah.
I never want to lose you, right? And a part of me wishes like, wow, I wish people would look at her and know, like black people when they see her know she's black, but other people who are not black, like she looks mixed race, but they're like, what is she? A part of me is just like, wow, I wish she was a little darker and she did look black. And I don't know if that's because I want her to feel stronger in her black identity because I have that person's voice in my head saying your baby won't be black. I don't know what it is. Or if it's me just being like, screw Indians, like I don't need any of you, and like I'm proud of my child. You know what I mean? And she's beautiful.
She's really beautiful, yeah.
You know, I don't know what it is. But even
Well, have more children, and
I
then maybe they will. Because like I said, my 3 kids, they're all different shades, and they've all got different hair. So the more kids you keep having, you're
your
gonna get like
pussy.
a
Let
yeah.
me say that to Melvin. We were gonna have 3, and now he's like, "Babe, I'm good with 1." I was like, "We need to have at least 2." Mel, he's like, "Okay, we're done at 2." I'm like, "Can we?" I wanted 4. Can we compromise at 3? He's like, "I think 2 is enough."
And you know what? This is the thing. It's like you could have another child, and they could look like way darker. Like my youngest daughter is basically a similar complexion to my husband, and my eldest is similar to me, and the middle one is in the middle. And it's so funny because it sounds so weird as well that I'm saying this, but I actually was happy about the fact that my eldest daughter once started crying because her bua, my husband's sister, said to her, "Oh, you're really fair. Like you're the fairest in the family. Yeah, your skin's so nice and fair. You look like Meghan Markle." She started crying because she was so sad that she wasn't dark enough.
That's weird for me to say, but I mean, I'm sad she cried, but also like I love that she. But I
I
think
know what I mean. It's like my kid's crying, but I'm quite happy that you find, happiness in wanting to be brown and celebrate your melanated skin.
But I know that a professional will listen to this conversation and be like, "This speaks to some sort of identity crisis in the child. She doesn't feel connected. This is the plight of the mixed race child."
Listen, you know what? When you're from a community where, you're trying to use Fair and Lovely and all that craziness, and your kid is like, "Oh, I really love being brown and I want to be brown and I love my," you know what I mean?
Absolutely. Are you kidding? 100%. It's funny because Melvin, we had our first glass of wine after having I breastfed for a while, so like I didn't drink alcohol. And then when we finally had it, Melvin's always been a lightweight, but he had a glass of wine and he goes, "Babe, gotta tell you something. Don't know if it's okay to say this, but I never thought my baby would be light skinned like this."
Really?
Yeah, because he's like, I mean, look at me, because Melvin's dark skinned. He's like, look at me, look at you, babe. You're not considered light skinned. Shawnee's light skinned.
Yeah. Anything can happen. But even, we in our family, like we have kids who are lighter skinned than my kids, and both the parents are black. So you know what I mean? It's just
Yeah,
like one of those things, but it's interesting, but it is a lot of learning, I find, as well. Like, I'm finding that as they're getting older, and I think you'll find this as well, you probably are aware of this anyway, there's a lot of learning that as a mum
Mhm.
of mixed race kids who are both Indian and black, you have to learn so much, like even the hair, like to do their hair.
Oh
Like,
my gosh.
I honestly, I have got really like low maintenance. I've got the most rubbish hair of my whole family because I can't be bothered. I have two sisters whose hair is immaculate. I don't care about my hair. But then my kids, it's a wash and go situation like you, right? So, and you can't do that with the kids. So,
No, and I
yeah.
feel guilty because like I still haven't figured it out, and I've been like stalking other blending couples on the internet to be like, what are you doing with your child's hair? Because she just like collects dust in her hair
Yeah.
everywhere and like things in her hair, and then it gets tangled, and like the back is super dry and the top is like all coily, and I know her hair is going to change and the texture is going to change, but yeah, as a parent to mixed race children, especially like black mixed race children, there's so many things we need to keep in mind. Like for me, one of the things that I want to enforce in Ishani is you need to be in the sun however much you want. The sun is your friend. You
Yeah.
know, I don't care how dark you get. Never, ever, ever be afraid of living your life because of the way that you look. Never be afraid of going to the beach, of spending the whole day out, of reading in the park because of the sun. I spent the first quarter century of my life afraid of the sun.
That's sad. And that's sad because a lot of Indian girls, South Asian girls have felt the same, I think.
Hmm. Yeah. And so making sure I'm cognizant of dissuading her from following the path I followed in terms of giving into the beliefs and values of other people versus those that have been inherently nurtured, that are good and that are based in kindness and in love. And also recognizing the fact that, especially in America, like she is black, and I have to be mindful. Like our nanny is from El Salvador, so she's not really super tapped into like, you know, we don't, so in America, there's this little baby cartoon named Gracie's Corner. I don't know if you've heard of her. She's a black girl, and she sings all these like popular kid songs, but it's like with hip hop. So it's
Mm.
like for black children, like representation for black children. And there's a song in America that it's like five little monkeys jumping on the bed, one fell off and bumped their head. So
Mhm.
Gracie's Corner's version of that is five little pandas jumping on the bed, because the
You
concept
just
of
don't
black,
monkeys no.
exactly. But our nanny is teaching Ishani animal sounds, and she loves teaching Ishani ooh ooh ah ah. So Ishani's walking around going ooh ooh ah ah, and I'm like, I
My
know
husband would have
we cannot do
got
this.
mad if he had heard anyone do that in this
Oh my god,
house.
Melvin was like, babe, what is Ruth teaching Ishani? Babe, our child can't be walking around sounding like a monkey. I'm like, I didn't know she was doing that. I'll talk to her. I didn't know, because
I know, but you have to think about these
yeah,
things,
like
right?
my dad calls me monkey, and he called Ishani monkey once. I was like, Papa, you can't do that. You can't do that. This is one of the things you cannot do that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. No, it is a lot of learning, unlearning, and all that kind of thing. Do you think that you'll take her to India at any point? Like, what's your kind of, do you have a relationship with India?
when I went to India, I got dysentery. Um,
Oh, we
you
all did. Yeah.
know, I've been thinking about it a lot because I've been wanting to like. I've seriously been thinking as Ishani gets older, I want to put her in Punjabi school. But kids are so awful, and people can be so awful. And when I went to India, my dad was really uncomfortable because like groups of men were just like following us and asking if because my mother's very fair skinned, and he was like, is your wife white? Is she Gori? Like what is your daughter? Is she single? And it was just very, very intense. Like there was zero personal space. And having Ishani, I don't know. I'm like very concerned for her physical safety and her psychological safety. It's also one of the reasons I'm not sure I want to put her in Punjabi school, because I remember how terrible kids were when I was little, and I was Indian in a white world. And Indian children, I don't know what they're going to be like with a mixed
Yeah.
race. So like I'm just very protective, so I don't know. I don't know.
Mm,
My experience in India was really uncomfortable.
right. I mean, for me, like we grew up going to India a lot because like all my dad's family are there and we've had a very strong connection with it. Like even the other day I was like, oh, I really miss it. Like I feel like
Really?
yeah, I
Dad
do.
hates India. He
I
hates
do, oh oh my, I feel like a yearning to go. Like every few years, I'm like, oh, I haven't been. I need to, like, I really want to, I need to go there again and be there. And I honestly, I love it that much that I considered like living there at one point. And yeah, my little sister, like we were all born and brought up here. She actually went to live there for a few years. You know, my mom and dad spent a lot of time there, months and stuff. So I have that strong connection to it. So for me, I that was one of the things I was like, "Oh, what's it gonna be like then when I go, you know, with my black husband and my, you know, black kids to India and all this?" And because for me, it's like you can assimilate, you look, you know, put on a suit, nobody
Yeah,
knows,
yeah,
right,
yeah.
until you open your mouth. So that was something to get over for me and a change for me, like, you know?
What was it like for you?
It was really nice because, my family there love my husband. They get on really well with him. They've got their own relationships, you know, with each other, and, you know, they're very close with my kids and really made an effort with us. So that was really nice. And everything was nice and, you know, he liked everything, the kids liked everything. The staring is a thing, you know, because, you know, you guys are Indian, and people stared at you and you felt uncomfortable. So obviously imagine somebody who has a husband who is black and who's really tall and the kids are mixed. There's something that no one has ever seen before. So, you know, like on the metros and things like that, there's a lot of staring. There was a lot of staring and there was a lot of craziness in terms of, you know, people wanting to take photos of my husband. Yep. Even like to the point where like they'd ask my kids if I was away, they'd say, "Oh, can you take a picture of me and your dad, please?" Like that, me shaking his hand. Outside the Taj Mahal, a guy was like, "Oh, can I get a picture, please?" And my husband thought he meant to take a picture of the guy against the backdrop of the Taj Mahal, which is normal. But he was like, "No, I would like a picture with you shaking your hand in front of the Taj Mahal." Can somebody take the
Do you
picture?
think he was like someone famous?
I don't know. It was like there was paparazzi or something. I don't know. I think I don't know because the only people that kind of look like him there are like, you know, like IPL cricket players that are from like the Caribbean or somewhere. I don't know. Um, they might have seen people like that, you know. So I guess sports do kind of break it down a little bit to get people, you know, used to different kinds of people. But he found that really bizarre. That is bizarre.
It's super
Obviously, that is
bizarre.
bizarre.
That's super bizarre. I mean, Melvin gets weirded out when he gets into cars and he takes like a black Uber, and people think he's like in the music industry and like try to like talk him up because they think he's someone like in the music industry, and he's like, I have a fabric business. I work in fabric. So I can't imagine going to a different country and having people just outright coming up to you and be like, "Can I take a photo?"
Yeah. So that was a bit like, you know, it's and like I said, he's quite a private kind of guy. He's not
Well,
like
there's
some
also
flamboyant,
like
you know what
you're constantly aware of how you look, and
yeah,
like that's so uncomfortable to be just highlighted for how you look.
yeah. And it is, you know, it is like that. And there have been racist incidents in Delhi because like that's where we went mostly, and that's, you know, and I was a bit worried because there have been like there's some African students there and they haven't had the best treatment a lot
Yeah.
of the time. So it was something that I was aware of, and you know, luckily it was fine. Everybody had a good time. My husband liked it. He was like, okay, that's the staring's a bit much, and it's all the paparazzi's a bit much and stuff. But he's not like I wouldn't go again. Like he's been twice, and he probably would go again. And the kids, I really would. I for me, because I grew up that way, you know.
Yeah.
So I kind of want that for them. But then also, I am aware that, you know, we have to have a balance of going to the motherland because there's another motherland, which is Ghana. So,
Yes, I was
you
gonna
know,
say, you guys gonna go to Ghana?
we're actually going quite soon,
Oh,
actually.
that's awesome.
So that'll be interesting. And for me, it will be quite
I think
eye-opening because
there's,
I'll be the one who's not
but
from
I
the, you know,
think
my
there's
kids
there's
are from.
a, there's a pretty big Indian diaspora in Africa, and I know that it's a big one in Kenya. I'm not sure about in Ghana, but it's funny you say when you talk about your experience of taking him to India. I have nothing to compare it to other than I wanted to go to this Brown Girl Mag event for Valentine's Day in Los Angeles, and I decided to not go because I just did not want to put my partner in a situation in his own city where he would be uncomfortable. Because they were talking about like everyone's welcome, everyone's, but I'm like, I know my people. I know how we think.
Mm.
And I don't want any whispers about, and I don't want my partner to feel like anyone's looking at him or wondering who he is or why he's there. And I don't know if that's something I have to work on because I'm so protective of him and so protective of my daughter. But then I also write a book about it. So how protective am I really? I don't know.
I mean, like when you want your child to be kind of part of the community and to experience the culture and stuff. And I've had those concerns before as well. Oh, I'm asking you to go to a mandir. You know what I mean? I'm asking you to go to a gurdwara and all this kind of thing. And it's going to be weird, and I don't know how it's going to be. I understand, but then you probably have to get to a point where you
Yeah,
do
that's
that, and it will be probably uncomfortable. And I remember once I went to my friend's wedding actually, and it was like the Hindu wedding. So I'd had a baby, my first baby, like she's only about 10 weeks old or something. And obviously I'm there in my sari, my husband's all suited and booted, and obviously we're a couple and whatever. And then the baby, she was in the pram. And the wedding ceremony was going on, right? So, around the fire and everything, everybody was seated facing towards it. And I remember, so my daughter woke up from her nap. When I took her out of her pram, I'm not joking, the whole row literally started craning their heads to look at the baby. It's like, okay, someone's getting married. Like one of my best friends is getting married. They're getting married on the stage now.
they wanted to
Because,
see what your child looked like.
yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
and you know what I mean? And I'm not one of the people that just kind of like, I don't really notice when people are looking and whatever, but I did notice that. So it must have been quite a,
Yeah. I see. I don't, but I do have to just suck it up and do it because she's going to be 15 months in a week. And I have never taken her to Gurdwara, and I've been wanting to go to Gurdwara for a long time. And I need to get over my fear and my concern and just deal with it as it comes. Because like I said, like I'm being a little bit of a hypocrite now where it's like, I don't want her to have rose tinted glasses, but mommy's going to protect you. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I need to start
I
going.
think when you've done things like that a few times, and then you kind of get used to the fact that it's not going to be how it was when you used to go with your family. It's never going to be like that anymore, because
Yeah.
now you are actually a mom of a child that is, Indian but black as well, right? And and they look like they are. And so it's never going to be how it was. And when you go over that and you're like, you know what, this is something new. This is the way it is for us. And we are going to go out about our business. But like I said to you, if then we then have to be the example of there's that family. But oh yeah, do you know what? They come here, it's completely normal. They're that family, they're cool.
Normalize it. Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's normal. So then just go about your business, and then you will just be that family. And it's just, I think it's just that thing of like getting used to that idea.
Yeah. I could talk to you forever, but I realize you've been
I
talking.
know, I know. This was supposed to not go over an hour, but obviously we've had a lot to say. But
And I could still keep talking, but I want to be. I don't
I
want to
know,
fall
I
asleep.
know. Um, I know, but we will keep in touch. I'm sure about that.
Yes.
But I want to just end on just asking you about your book again. Like, where can people get hold of it? Just share some
So
details.
yeah, you can buy the book where books are sold online. Amazon and Barnes and Noble are the two popular ones. It's called Love and Prejudice: Unlearning Anti-Blackness as a South Asian, and all of the book profits from my sales will be going to Know Your Rights Camp. I definitely recommend, especially if you live in the United States, to look into the organization. It's really amazing. And yeah, if you do read the book, please reach out to me and tell me what you think. I all the anxieties I have about putting my story out there get alleviated when I get some of these messages. I had a woman from England reach out to me who's 65 and who said she has never felt seen until she read my book because she's Jamaican and Indian. And she's never read anything that discusses the question of identity with that combination so clearly. So please let me know if you read it and what you think about it.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you so much for coming on, and thank you to everybody for listening. That's all for this episode. Until next week. Bye. Peace out, Bernie.